normally. Give birth normally through the vaginal birth canal. That's how women were programmed. Babies haven't got appreciably bigger over the last few years. Mothers have got a bit bigger, but you have to imagine what that baby is to go through is the pelvis. And there's space in that pelvis. We just need to get how we are in labour right. And we need to get women more active in labour. Get them off the beds, I say. Get them off. Get women upright in labour. Let them walk about. Let them do what their body's telling them to do. Don't tie them to the bed. Don't intervene. Don't put drips up. Don't do anything that's going to slow someone down. And maybe women need to stay at home for as long as possible.
I think overall, if you look at all the data, particularly in well-resourced countries, birth either way is very, very safe. But overall, vaginal delivery is probably still safer than caesarean section. That is in the instance where it's caesarean section without an obstetric indication. So I think for a woman who has no complications in her pregnancy, she should be supported and she should aim for a normal delivery, because that is the best, not only for her in that pregnancy, but in her subsequent pregnancies.
I think sometimes it's unhelpful to talk about what's the safest and what's not the safest, because then are you implying that anyone that makes a different choice to what that birth is making a dangerous choice? And then you get into this whole spiral of criticism and conflict, which I think is one of the most unhelpful things that's going on in maternity care today. Yes, we'll always be able to probably find what's statistically safest for a certain group of women or a different group of women, and certainly for babies. You know, I've gone on record as saying that I think the safest way for a baby to be born is at 39 weeks via caesarean delivery. But does that mean that every woman therefore should have a caesarean? Absolutely not, because a large proportion of babies will be born perfectly safely having a planned vaginal delivery. So why on earth put the woman through surgery when the chances are the baby's going to be fine?
The problem is when you look at caesarean section in essence, or what it is, it's a major abdominal operation, but because of the efforts that have been made over the last 20, nay 50 years to make surgery safer, it comes very much at the safe end of the spectrum compared to a lot of other operations, because you're doing it on fit, healthy women in situations, and this is talking about elective, but even emergency caesarean sections, where we're acutely aware of what the risks are. And there's quite a narrow spectrum of risk compared to some operations, and some of those are very manageable. And so the overall risk from an operation is small.
The more we learn about long-term effects, the more we want women to understand that not only is this surgery very expensive, not only will it impact the postpartum period dramatically, but it has long-term potential to really affect other pregnancies, definitely, and also a woman's basic health throughout the life cycle.
The safest way to give birth is to give birth normally. I would use the expression normal. I wouldn't use the expression natural, because natural to me implies you've got no support around you at all almost. So a normal birth for me is the safest way to give birth. I know there are people who would argue that the safest way to give birth is by caesarean section, because they say this is a very easy operation these days. You then don't have the risk of vaginal trauma, and the mother's fit and healthy very quickly. I totally disagree with that. We're now seeing very good evidence of the subsequent harm to women of having caesarean sections, particularly in further births. And I think it will not be long before we start to see a really serious impact on women's health of second and third caesarean sections. And there is so much evidence now about the risks that are inherent in caesarean section, even in a first section. I would argue very strongly that a normal birth is the safest.